Superior Pond, superior care, your backyard retreat beyond compare. Minnesota's finest at your call. Your pond stays perfect all year long.
When a patio paver cracks, or say that gorgeous water feature in your backyard springs this slow, mysterious leak right at the end of August, there's this almost universal human instinct to just kind of look away.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like we tell ourselves, let's just put it off until the weather gets warm. When spring rolls around, the ground thaws out, the sun is shining, we'll just fix it then.
It feels like an incredibly logical choice, honestly. I mean, spring is just culturally ingrained in us as this season of renewal.
Yeah.
It feels like the mandated time to, clean up and start fresh.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into some source material that completely dismantles that instinct. We're unpacking this really comprehensive guide from Superior Ponds, which is a specialized exterior contractor based down in southern Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And they publish an operational breakdown focused on fall pond projects. And their core thesis, which is fascinating, is that waiting until spring to tackle your outdoor renovations is actually a massive logistical and financial mistake.
Yeah, it really flips the script.
It does. They make a super compelling case that fall is actually the hidden, golden window for getting outside work done.
And what stands out immediately in this guide is that the mechanics of their argument, they don't just apply to water features.
Right.
The operational, the financial, and even the biological principles they lay out apply to almost any exterior home project you might be considering. I mean, from hardscaping a new patio to upgrading your property's drainage.
So unpacking this whole wait until spring myth, reading through this source, a really specific scenario came to my mind.
Okay, let's hear it.
Planning your big outdoor repair for the first warm week of spring is basically the home improvement equivalent of deciding you're going to get into peak physical shape by joining a gym on January 1st.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is spot on.
Right. You buy the new shoes, you have this grand optimistic vision of your new routine, and you show up at 6 a.m. only to find that you're fighting 3 other people for a broken elliptical machine.
Exactly.
Everyone in your city had the exact same idea at the exact same time. The environment is just chaotic, and you end up leaving completely frustrated.
And in the contracting world, those taken treadmills are the booked-up crews and the exhausted supply chains.
Yeah.
That January 1st chaos is severely magnified by the actual physical environment of spring. I mean, the source specifically points out the reality of a Minnesota spring, and it is rarely that idyllic picture of blooming tulips and dry breezes.
It's mud.
It is mud.
Mud that just seems to swallow absolutely everything.
Right, because of the physics of a thaw. When spring arrives, the top few inches of topsoil thaw out, but the earth a foot down is often still frozen, completely solid.
Oh, sure.
So all that melting snow and spring rain has absolutely nowhere to drain. Your yard essentially becomes this shallow bowl of saturated sponge.
Which sounds disastrous for heavy machinery.
Yeah, it is. If you bring a crew or a 5,000-pound mini excavator onto that surface, you aren't just leaving footprints. You are destroying the cellular structure of the soil. You're tearing up grass by the roots and, creating immense collateral damage to the surrounding landscape.
And add to that the fact that contractors aren't just sitting around waiting for your call in April.
Right, they're slammed.
They are already dealing with a mountain of emergency triage from the winter. You've got pipes that burst, retaining walls that collapsed under snow loads, pond liners that sheared under the expanding ice.
Yeah, so by the time the ground is actually dry enough to safely maneuver heavy equipment, their schedules are packed tight.
Yeah.
The guide actually notes that planned non-emergency projects like your nice pond upgrade or your patio expansion, those routinely get pushed out to mid-June.
Mid-June. So you've spent the entire first half of your summer staring out the kitchen window at a broken pond or a torn up patch of dirt.
Pretty much.
And you are paying peak season prices, assuming the contractor doesn't just run out of bandwidth completely and bump your job to the following year.
Which happens a lot. The underlying math of spring simply does not work in the homeowner's favor, which introduces the alternative the guide heavily advocates for, which is treating fall as the gap season.
And this makes so much sense from just a human resources perspective. Like, As October rolls in, these exterior trades crews are finally wrapping up those massive, months-long summer builds. The frantic, overtime pace of July slows down. It creates this natural, flexible breathing room where a crew actually has a 3 or 4 day window to slip in a targeted repair.
Exactly. The source actually cites a 2025 operational review from Alma Homes, and they refer to fall as the Goldilocks season for exterior trades.
Oh, I like that.
Think about the physiological toll on a crew. Lugging boulders or mixing mortar in 95-degree heat with 80% humidity. I mean, that means frequent breaks, slower movements, massive heat fatigue.
Yeah, it's brutal.
But in fall, the humidity plummets. Those violent, unpredictable afternoon thunderstorms just disappear.
So the environment is actually predictable. You aren't losing 3 days of labor because a pop-up thunderstorm washed out your trench.
Right. The environmental stability translates directly to meticulous work. Whether a technician is, heat welding a rubber pond liner, or leveling a plumbing run, or placing heavy limestone, they are doing it in a controlled, comfortable environment.
Without fighting heat exhaustion or a sudden downpour.
Exactly.
Taking that a step further, the advantages aren't just operational. They are incredibly financial. Treating fall like your project window is basically the equivalent of walking into an end-of-year clearance event at a car dealership.
Oh, yeah, the supply chain dynamics shift completely.
Right, because demand plummets. Everyone else is inside watching football, so suddenly the warehouses are sitting on all this inventory.
Just waiting to move it.
Exactly. If you need a specialized high-efficiency pump or custom liner dimensions, bulk rock, intricate plumbing manifolds, the lead times just vanish.
Poof.
Gone. And just like those dealerships trying to clear the lot to make room for the 2026 sedans, manufacturers are actively phasing out this year's equipment models.
Right.
The guide highlights that you can often snag premium, high-end gear at steep discounts just because it's technically last season's CU.
And you also bypass the bureaucratic bottleneck, which is huge.
Oh, permits.
Yes, permitting offices in the fall are seeing a fraction of the applications they process in April. You aren't waiting 3 weeks for a municipal clerk to stamp a basic zoning variance. The turnaround is often just a few days.
That's amazing.
You are leveraging the natural lull in the market to get faster, cheaper, and highly focused service.
Well, all of those logistical and financial perks are fantastic, but they honestly feel like table stakes compared to the actual science of the season that's detailed in the second half of this guide.
This is the really cool part.
This is where the deep dive blew my mind, because there is a deeply physical, structural reason why fall is the superior time to rip into a landscape. It comes down to structural visibility.
Yeah, think about attempting to trace a problem in a yard in mid-July. The landscape is in full aggressive bloom.
Right.
It is lush, it is beautiful, but from an engineering perspective, all that vegetation is acting as dense camouflage. Thick hostas, sprawling creeping jenny, overgrown shrubs, they completely swallow up the underlying infrastructure.
So if you have a slow leak in a 30-foot artificial stream, you are essentially blindly digging through a jungle trying to find the source.
You were just guessing.
Yeah.
Hidden inlets, skimmer boxes, embankments, they are totally obscured.
Yeah.
But in fall, the leaves drop.
The canopy opens up.
Exactly, the perennials die back to the soil level. Suddenly, the entire skeleton of the landscape is laid bare. The source actually references a 2024 report from Georgia Stormwater to illustrate that this isn't just a backyard phenomenon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, massive citywide municipal stormwater management systems mandate their major inspections for fall for this exact reason.
Because you can actually see the earth.
When you strip away the vegetative cover, identifying hidden soil erosion, or finding where invasive tree roots have breached a liner, or locating a crushed pipe, it becomes infinitely easier. You can visually trace the flow of water without hacking through 6 inches of foliage.
Okay, I follow the logic on the visibility. Seeing the pipes makes fixing the pipes easier. But looking at this from a biological standpoint, I have a major point of concern here.
Okay, what is it?
If I have a 2,000-gallon pond full of expensive, delicate koi fish, and I decide to drain the water, rip out old plumbing, and drop heavy rocks around in the middle of November, I mean, my gut tells me that is going to completely traumatize that delicate ecosystem right before the harsh winter hits.
That is the single most common hesitation homeowners voice, and it is a perfectly reasonable fear.
Right. It seems scary.
But the biological mechanics detailed in the text reveal that the reality is entirely the reverse. Summer is actually the most dangerous time to disrupt an aquatic ecosystem.
Wait, because fish are cold-blooded, does the dropping water temperature essentially act like a natural anesthetic for them?
That is a phenomenal way to conceptualize it, yeah. Fish are ectothermic. Their metabolism, their heart rate, their oxygen requirements, they are all completely dictated by the ambient temperature of the water.
Okay.
As fall temperatures drop into the 40s, their metabolism slows to a crawl. They enter a state of near dormancy called torpor.
Torpor, right.
They aren't eating, their stress responses are incredibly muted, and they require just a fraction of the oxygen they normally do.
So they basically don't care that a construction crew is mucking around in their habitat.
Exactly. Netting them and transferring them to holding tanks in November induces vastly less physiological stress than chasing them around in 80-degree water.
That makes total sense.
But the science goes deeper than just the fish. It involves the entire chemical balance of the pond.
The nitrogen cycle.
Precisely. Pond sludge, the muck at the bottom is basically an underwater compost pile. It's full of decomposing organic matter. If you do heavy excavation or pull up a liner in the middle of July, you kick all that rotting debris up into the water column. And warm water holds very little dissolved oxygen, but it supercharges bacterial growth.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
A total collapse.
Yeah.
The disturbed muck releases trapped hydrogen sulfide and ammonia. The warm temperatures cause massive pH swings.
Yikes.
You end up triggering huge toxic algae blooms and severe ammonia spikes that can easily suffocate and kill the entire fish population in a matter of hours.
A compost pile underwater paints a really vivid, terrifying picture. So in the fall, because the water is cold, it holds significantly more oxygen, and those dangerous microbes are too sluggish to cause a toxic shock.
Right.
The cold water acts as this chemical buffer, giving you the slack to open at the system, flush the lines, and clean the muck out safely.
It is scientifically the most forgiving time to disrupt a water feature.
Okay, so since the biology and the physics are giving us a green light, what projects are we actually supposed to be pulling the trigger on? Because the guide draws some very strict boundaries. You can't just do anything in November.
No, definitely not. Fall is definitively not the time for large-scale excavations or massive expansions.
So if I want to turn my 10-foot pond into a 40-foot lake and bring in heavy machinery to carve out the earth, I missed my window. Why is that strictly a summer job?
It comes down to the mechanics of frost heave.
Okay.
Soil is not a solid block of matter, right? It is porous, filled with microscopic air pockets that hold moisture. As fall progresses into late November, the ambient temperature drops and that moisture begins to freeze.
Right.
And water expands by about 9% when it turns to ice.
And that expansion pushes the soil upward.
With thousands of pounds of hydrostatic pressure, if you try to carve out a massive new hole and pack fresh dirt around it while the frost is creeping in, you are working with unstable, expanding earth.
Oh, I see.
When spring arrives and that deep frost finally thaws, the ground will collapse and settle in totally unpredictable ways, completely ruining the level of your new pond walls.
Okay, so we avoid the massive digging. The ideal fall project list is all about targeted, high-impact interventions.
Exact.
Fixing slow leaks, reworking faulty plumbing manifolds, patching or replacing UV-degraded liners, and, swapping out failing pumps while the supply chain is open.
The guide also emphasizes...
Right. But if you install it in October, it sits out in the elements for 5 months. It gets battered by autumn rain, blanketed in snow, exposed to freeze-thaw cycles.
Yeah.
Spores for moss and lichen need those damp, cool, undisturbed conditions to establish themselves on the stone. By the time you start spending time in your yard in May, the stone has naturally aged. It has this beautiful, organic, grown-in patina. It looks like it has belonged in that spot for a decade.
You just let nature do the distressing work for you.
Exactly.
And to ground all of this theory, the operational benefits, the biology, the weathering, the source, provide some highly illuminating real-world case studies of this fall window being utilized perfectly.
Yeah, the story of Sarah up in Lakeville perfectly encapsulates the dread of the spring myth. Sarah has this beautiful pond that develops a slow, unexplainable leak right at the tail end of summer.
Oh.
Her immediate instinctual thought is to put it off, endure the stress of topping off the water with a hose all winter, and just deal with it when the ground thaws.
She was preparing for a muddy, expensive spring nightmare.
But her contractor looks at the late October forecast. The leaves are down, so visibility is high, the summer rush is over, and they have a golden 4-day weather window.
So they jump on it.
They mobilize immediately. In just 4 days, they safely isolate her fish, rip out the old material, completely replace her liner, rework the underlying plumbing to fix the leak, test the entire system, and tuck the pond in for winter just as the first flurries start falling.
Oh.
She spent the entire winter with total peace of mind, knowing the asset was protected.
And then there is the 2024 Johnson project over in Chaska, which is just a masterclass in combining necessary repairs with opportunistic upgrades.
Oh, this one is great.
Yeah, Stephen and Melissa Johnson had a waterfall stream that just wasn't flowing right. They had intermittent algae blooms and a leaking skimmer box. They, too, were hesitant, planning to suffer through it until a spring refresh.
But they capitalized on the gap season.
They really did. The crew arrived in late October. They utilized the cold water to safely sedate and isolate the fish without triggering an ammonia spike in the holding tanks.
Because of the torpor we talked about.
Exactly. They stripped the stream, relined the leaking sections, and totally replaced the cracked skimmer. But the masterstroke was the hardware.
Right.
They upgraded the main pump using an aggressive end-of-year manufacturer rebate on a model that was about to be discontinued.
They basically treated their yard like a clearance rack and scored a high-end pump for a fraction of the peak season cost.
And they tested the upgraded flow, shut the system down, and gave the pond's biological filter a totally clean slate going into dormancy.
Amazing.
When spring arrived, the Johnsons flipped a switch and had a crystal clear, full-flowing stream with zero algae issues. The guide specifically notes that while the Johnsons were drinking coffee on their patio enjoying the water, their neighbors across the street were knee-deep in freezing mud, trying to coordinate a crew to fix winter damage.
It sounds like absolute magic when the stars align. But we do need to be realistic about the geography here. Beating the Minnesota frost is a literal race against the clock.
It absolutely is.
How do professional crews actually pull this off without getting trapped by an early blizzard or a sudden deep freeze?
It requires uncompromising risk mitigation. The guide is incredibly transparent that late-season work carries unique perils. The rapidly shrinking daylight hours, early snow accumulation, and topsoil freezing are serious threats to a timeline.
Yeah, if the ambient temperature suddenly drops to 35 degrees, doesn't that fundamentally alter how construction adhesives work?
It dictates the chemistry entirely.
Oh, wow.
A standard silicone or polyurethane sealant relies on drawing moisture from the air to trigger a chemical cross-linking process to cure. In cold, dry November air, that chemistry fails.
It just won't dry.
The polymers become brittle, or they just turn into a useless paste that washes away. Professional crews have to swap out all their standard materials for specialized cold weather-rated urethanes and epoxies that cure via a totally different chemical catalyst.
And what about the frost heave we talked about? If they have an open trench overnight and the temperature plummets, how do they protect the soil?
They deploy heavy-duty thermal insulation blankets.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah, they drape these thick insulated tarps over the exposed earth and the newly glued plumbing lines at the end of every shift. It traps the residual geothermal heat rising from deep underground, preventing the topsoil from freezing and shifting their leveling work overnight.
That is next-level dedication to the environment.
They also heavily pad the schedule. A contractor cannot book a fall project back-to-back with zero margin for error. If a snow squall blows through, they need buffer days.
That makes sense.
And because the sun sets at 4:30 p.m., logistical efficiency has to be flawless. A crew doesn't have the luxury of losing 2 hours running back to the hardware store for a forgotten PVC fitting.
Well, knowing the tight margins these crews operate under brings us to the actionable playbook for you, the listener. If you want to take advantage of this golden window for any outdoor project, you have a very specific role to play.
Absolutely.
First, and most importantly, do not wait until you see frost on the pumpkin in November to make the call.
Oh, by November, the logistical window has effectively slammed shut.
Right. You need to be reaching out to contractors in September or the very first week of October to secure your spot in that late October gap season. Second, you must be ruthlessly decisive.
Very true.
Make a prioritized list, separating your absolute must-dos, like fixing that slow leak or replacing a dying pump from your nice-to-haves, like, running new low-voltage lighting.
Indecision kills fall projects. If you take 3 weeks waffling over the exact color of the natural stone you want imported for the waterfall, you will lose your weather window simply waiting on supply chain freight deliveries.
Yeah, you have to budget for flexibility. Mentally prepare for the fact that a random Tuesday snowstorm might shift the dates. And always ask your contractor one defining question. What is your specific cold weather action plan?
Yes, ask that question.
If they look at you blankly and don't mention thermal blankets or low temperature adhesives, you are talking to someone who is going to bungle your project when the temperature drops.
That vetting process is critical advice for a pond, a patio, or a retaining wall.
bringing all of these threads together. Relying on spring for your exterior repairs is a pervasive myth. It is the January 1st gym rush.
Yep.
It guarantees higher labor costs, agonizing scheduling delays, and the nightmare of working in saturated, unstable mud.
Treating fall as your opportunistic gap season completely flips the script. You leverage open supply chains to get better materials at lower prices. You get the undivided attention of highly skilled crews working in stable weather. And most importantly, you respect the biology of the environment, utilizing the cold water to safely upgrade a system without throwing it into toxic shock.
You secure the ultimate luxury, the peace of mind knowing your property is buttoned up, structurally sound, and safely tucked in before the deep destructive cold sets in.
It highlights the profound value of proactive management versus reactive panic. When you utilize the fall smartly, your yard remains what it was always intended to be, a tranquil, personal retreat.
Not a headache.
Right? It doesn't devolve into a stressful, money-draining chore that consumes all your spring weekends.
I love that framing. And as we wrap up this deep dive, looking at this whole concept of seasonal timing, I'm going to leave you with a broader thought to mull over.
Okay.
We just spent this entire conversation learning how a complex, delicate biological system is actually easiest to evaluate, repair, and upgrade when it is completely dormant.
Right.
When all the flashy, distracting summer foliage is stripped away, the underlying metabolism is slowed to a crawl, and the true structural skeleton is finally exposed. It makes you wonder, look around at the other complex elements of your own life.
Oh, that's interesting.
Your career trajectory, your daily habits, your personal projects. What other systems in your life might be vastly easier to repair, optimize, or upgrade if you wait for their quiet, dormant season, rather than trying to overhaul them when everyone else is rushing the gin on January 1st and everything is in full chaotic bloom?
That is a wonderful grounding perspective to take away from this. Thank you so much for exploring these mechanics with us, and we look forward to having you back for the next deep dive. Take care.
Superior pond, superior care, your backyard retreat beyond compare. Minnesota's finest at your call. Your pond stays perfect all year long.